All right. Well, that was kind of amusing. My game of no retreat ended on the turn 3, the first sudden death victory possible. The Germans picked up a victory. I think that kind of highlights a feeling that I'm getting about the game. Not, oh God, it's unbalanced. I'm not the person to ask about that. There are people who've played a lot more of this who probably have a much better opinion on it, especially. So one of the feelings might be, one of the questions which I kind of raise is, wow, it may be that there's a very good chance for the Germans to end things early. Like I've seen, because every single game that I've played, now granted every game has been, all the players have been relatively inexperienced. But if that's the case, my guess would be it's the expansions that have kind of maybe tweaked things. Maybe there are new cards. Certainly the sudden death victory conditions, which I don't think was in the original, caused that opportunity. Now, I suspect because of the popularity of this game, because of the fact that I don't remember anyone ever saying, oh my God, these expansions totally break the game, because it got printed with the expansions just baked into it, that the truth is that it's just a rough game for the Soviet player, and they have to work hard, because every time I've played, it's been pushing right on the edge on those sudden deaths happening fairly early. So my suspicion is more a matter of ineptitude on my part, and to some extent on every one of my opponent's parts, including myself. But yeah, one thing when I pointed this out to my wife, that, wow, I beat myself better than I beat you. She was talking about, well, I bet you I won't be able to end it as quickly with the Germans. I'm like, you want to give it a try? So we may be playing it again, switching sides. That should be kind of interesting. But, whatever. I don't feel like the hand that I got with the Germans was terribly lucky here. Now, I do feel the Russians could have prevented this turn. I know they could have prevented this turn 3 sudden death. But what would that have meant? It would have been them making 3 attacks to prevent that victory point loss, had I been aware. And if that's the case, they would have been in terrible position for the next turn. And that means, okay, sure, they survive. And if I had been aware, that was what they would have done. But the next one's only 23 on turn 6. Now, given that I get the clear weather event that I got, I don't know if the Russians have a chance on that position either. Which is, you know, I maybe after I play this again opposed, I'll have a better feeling how to defend with the Russians, and maybe I'll give it another shot. I don't want to do it right away for a number of reasons. I've got things. I've always got more than I can handle online. I mean, you know, there's maybe 500 games waiting to be done that I have. But this one, obviously, I don't feel like I've got enough information here to really give the solid kind of review as to, you know, what my feeling is overall. But from the little bit that I've played, I do still kind of step away. First of all, I haven't answered any of my questions about the game, you know. But from what little I've played, I do still kind of feel this intriguing, hey, I want to figure this out. I want to see if I can make this work for me. That's the kind of feeling that actually does get me to play a game again and again. Those of you who watch my playthroughs and my reviews probably know I don't usually play a game many times. Usually I get enough of a feel for it that I figure okay, well, it's not terribly interesting to me, even if I haven't determined, what the optimal strategies are, etc. And in this, I don't think I'll ever be one of those people who wants to play it tremendously competitively and be able to be very good at it. But like things like La Révolution Française or Hispania, almost the fact that I can't get a reasonable ending out of it, but I feel like that ending's there. Now, with La Révolution Française, the last time I did it on video, I got a reasonable ending. But other than that, that seems to be the thing that really draws me in, that draws me to play a game again and again. And eventually, maybe some of them I conclude are broken. This one, I'm assuming, is not, because unlike the Azure Wish stuff, you kind of have this... There's a community that seems to agree that this is a fantastic game, and they're the competitive gamers, the people who really study it. So, when I first sat down to play Go, for example, I played it all wrong, and if I had ever played anyone who had any idea what they were doing, I was playing by the rules, more or less. I don't think I understood things like Seki, but I'm not sure I even do now. The whole idea is that, I just didn't get the game. And I have the feeling here, not so much that I don't get the game, but that I haven't really been able to see how the Russians can defend themselves. It feels like the cards, every time I play, come up in such a way. Now, the first time I played as the Germans, this wasn't really the case, although I don't know what cards I had. What I do remember is that I felt like they were useless to me. There was nothing I wanted to play out of my initial hand. And it wasn't until the third or fourth turn that I started playing any at all. Now, does that mean none were helping me, or was I just not paying enough attention? I was, playing at the convention, and there were people around, and I don't think I'm my best. Obviously, I don't think my best here either when I'm doing the videos. But yeah, it's a game where you absolutely have to watch everything, understand everything that's going on, and weigh every single piece on the board, because every one of them is of importance. And in this case, talking it through, trying to play through it, etc., I made a ridiculous mistake, losing track of how many victory points there were, and when this little sudden death was coming up to some extent, because I don't think I even realized that. They come every 3 turns. That's quite a hefty amount of those. Anyway, what when does initiative switch? Initiative changes down here. There's pretty much no chance for the Russians to have 27 points there. Then it goes to 19, 24, 30. 8? That can't be right. 15? See, that doesn't even make sense. So I'm not even sure that this is correct, or that my understanding is correct. Anyway. This is one of those few games that I feel this desire. I almost want to try playing it again on the camera, but until I figure out what the Russian defense is here, how they can reasonably, say, prevent, I don't know, a 50-50 chance of the Germans winning within the first 6 turns, because in every game I've played, it's kind of fallen to that. Even when I was the less experienced player, it could just be that what the Russians need to do, in terms of thought processes is something that I'm just not geared for. But what I've seen is when they do defend aggressively, which is against my nature on those early turns, they kind of get wiped out. And if they can fall back to the good terrain as I did, they would. Now, had that Stalin Orders an Attack card not come up, or had I forgotten to play it and let that stand, then this would have been an interesting fight, I think. Yeah, we were at that point. And yeah, the next one, 23, was going to be hard to avoid anyhow, because the Germans were going to gain, I think, 3 or 4 cities. But maybe the Russians could capture a unit. Maybe they could do something to finish something off. I know that's what my wife had to do on turn 3. She had to capture a German unit on turn 2 or whatever to prevent me from winning on turn 3. And that disrupted her line so much that when the turn 6 victory condition came up, there was just no question. I mean, she had lost Leningrad and almost everything, really. Anyway, like I said, there's not a whole lot for me to say about this. It's an intriguing game. I'm no further than I was at the intro in a lot of ways. In fact, I feel like I was so proud of myself because I had this strong Russian line. I thought, that's going to be tough to break. But I just couldn't count well. And it's tough for me to keep track of things like that. And that's why when I'm keeping track of everything in a solo game, it's going to be really, really tough for me to handle something like this. Anyway, such is, it's still interesting. I think it's going to be a real uphill climb for a lot of players picking something like this up, or maybe they're all just smarter than I am, in terms of, hey, how do I stop you? How do I handle this? Because the German conditions look easy. You just grab everything you can. The Russian conditions, well, the kind of withdrawal that you're used to in most East Front games doesn't work in this one. You can't pull back that far, apparently. And the card play, etc., puts you in a position where I think, usually, or quite often, events are going to come up in such a way. In my second game, it was the Panzer Blitz. Allowed me to get an extra couple hexes of movement with my tanks, which got me to spread out and be more dangerous, more able to seize things in time to threaten the third turn. This time, it was the Stalin Attacks card, really. And it's very, very easy to grab a lot of points in that first one. One thing I noticed was the errata here. I missed this. It never played an effect in either of the 2 games where I think I wasn't playing by this rule. But what it says is the phasing player is under no to delete the following sentence, the phasing player is under no obligation to conduct a voluntary attack in which he played a target marker. So I assume that was just, there was a decision that was not a good rule anymore, because that's not like some kind of typo, right? And it's a detailed enough description that it couldn't have been a typo. It was something that had to be removed during playtesting. If they're making changes like that in playtesting, you gotta figure that the game made it past the first few turns often enough that it really, that maybe the chances of the Germans pulling off that early victory are fairly low. If they're not fairly low, if they have an even chance of taking victory at that point, then you got to kind of wonder, because you're walking into a situation where, and this another game that does this is Victor Games' Korean War, where it feels, at least at first with that game, that the Americans are impossible to play. That they'll lose within the first segment of the game, the first few turns. that they can't hold on to stuff. Now, I've learned to defend with the U.S. fairly well and prevent that from happening. But if it is indeed fairly likely in this for the Germans to take that, if it's a 50-50 chance, then you might be walking into a game where you think you're playing a long campaign. It's going to take you, in the case with my wife and I, it was going to take a weekend to play, the way we take breaks and everything, and we ended up playing in just a couple hours, even though we were learning it. So that's kind of a weird situation when you run into something like that, but that's okay. Component-wise, as I've said, and I showed you during the intro, these are beautiful components. Overall, I want to figure this puzzle out, and I want to see if it's a good game. But I can't tell you right now. I really can't.